preserver cantered down the length of the human mall. His eyes shifted focus from one human to another as he passed by numerous stores and apartment complexes. He paused in front of one apartment building and typed on his chest device. He quickly sent off several missives and continued on his way. He turned down through a security checkpoint, passing through easily enough with his credentials, and continued into the human star docks. The roadway was busy with carts of goods and people going back and forth. He dodged a speeding hauler and used the human sign for indignation with one of his 3-fingered hands. He looked at his holo display for a moment to check the berth number. He confirmed it and looked around. The preserver slowed, walking cautiously toward the specified ship. He noted all the storage containers sitting out on the gangway. He looked out through the dockyard, watching the numerous ships above and below moving, and then looked at this ship's door. He approached and let the eyelet scan him. He waved at the camera. The door opened and a human male stepped out. "Hello?" He stuck out his hand. You must be the preserver?" The preserver didn't hesitate and took the man's hand, shaking it. "Yes. You are Patrick?" The man nodded. Yes. Oh, good. I was worried all of this was a scam." The preserver focused an eye on the man while the other two scanned the surroundings. "I am true to my word. Are you attempting to scam me?" Patrick shook his head with a curt laugh, trying to look back into the ship. "No, of course not. We've gambled everything we had on this." "May I come in and see the samples?" the preserver asked. Patrick stepped back inside the transport and waved the creature to follow. The preserver lowered his upper body enough so he could pass through the door, entering into the cool air. He sucked in some of the air, tasting it. It was thick with human scent. "How many people did you bring with you?" Patrick led him down one of the inner corridors. He looked over his shoulder to reply. 30 families. 157 total lives aboard." The preserver noticed a human child peeking out from one of the side door windows. He maintained focus on Patrick with the other two eyes. "How many samples did you bring?" Patrick turned around a sharp corner. "I brought exactly what I said. 3,000 samples. Birds, plants, aquatic creatures, insects, pretty much everything on your list, and then some." The man's voice echoed in the well-lit hall. The preserver rounded the corner and sped up to keep pace. "I am true to my word. 1,000 per sample and an apartment building for your people." Patrick stopped at a door and pressed the button to open it. He motioned for the preserver to enter. "They're all in there." The preserver paused and stared inside. It was a cold storage locker. He bobbed a bit and cantered inside. His hands ran over the labels and shelves. He pulled 3 open at once, scanning the contents and then abruptly shutting them. He went through numerous drawers and shelves before Patrick interrupted. "Pardon. Preserver, sir." The preserver paused, one eye in hand, to look at the man. "Yes?" "You are liking everything so far?" Patrick asked. "Of course. This is a dream of mine come true. You aren't wanting to renegotiate, are you?" The preserver shifted his weight, growing in height. Patrick raised his hands. No. I'm happy so long as you come through on your end. I actually wanted to broker another few deals for you." The preserver lowered a bit and gave the man his full focus. "Go on." "I got all my extended family to sell all we had to get this arc rift graded. I didn't really mention the deal I had with you until just before we had to evacuate. I didn't figure you'd actually be real, you know?" The preserver shifted his eyes a bit. "I am real. Of course. I know you're real. I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up, so I kept the deal to myself until just before we left. Well, when word did get out, people got excited. A couple of the families looted the museum before the fighting broke out. Lots of folks on board have samples they are hoping you'll buy." The preserver leaned forward and peeked out into the hall. Numerous human heads were peeking out of rooms up and down the hall. He focused on Patrick. "I have no reason not to extend the offer. Anything new to my collection, they will get the same rate. Any new samples but of already owned species, I'll give 50 clams for. The preserver pulled his body back into the locker and continued going through the samples. Patrick looked down the hall and gave thumbs up to everyone. Several cheers broke out. The preserver pulled out a jar containing a frozen creature. "What is this peculiar thing?" Patrick stepped up beside him and looked it over. "Oh, that is a curious one. It's called a platypus. It was native to our homeland." Patrick pointed at the small spurs on its arms. "It was a male. I think my buddy Steve has a fur from a female he was hoping to sell you." "Beautiful specimen. It is a mud-burrowing creature, correct?" Patrick nodded. "Yeah, it builds dens in creek banks. Lays eggs, actually." The preserver gently set the jar back into its slot in the drawer. "This is amazing. So many. These are all creatures from Earth, correct?" Patrick smiled. "Not just anywhere on Earth. These all come from Australia." "And that is on Earth?" Patrick winked at him. "Best place on Earth, friend." The preserver bobbed a bit. "Beautiful." The preserver busied himself in his lab cataloging the samples. He had the humans bring them through the station and into his lab box by box. He motioned to one of them, waving one of his hands. "What is that one?" he asked through his chest device. The woman looked down at the crate. "Tasmanian samples. My family's name is on the box. You said you'd pay 1,000 each for samples you don't have, right?" The preserver sat down his labeler and cantered around toward her. He touched the lid and slid it open, revealing a box of bones and taxidermized specimens. One of his eyes focused on her. "Tell me about this Tasmanian." She looked him over, hesitant. "Tasmanians come from Tasmania." "Is that a disease? Am I misunderstanding? I'm sorry my translator is hanging on that word." She knelt beside the box, looking in. "Tasmania is an island off the coast of Australia. This box has some of the last remnants of species that went extinct. My mom and I felt bad taking them, but the place was abandoned. Nobody seemed to care." The preserver lowered his body into a kneel and lifted bones out from the crate. "These creatures mean a lot to you." She nodded. "Yeah, we're proud of our fauna. It was a national pain when these ones went extinct." He pawed through them with all 3 hands. "And humans all know these animals?" "Lots do, I guess. That one there, the koala, was world famous before space expansion. People tried raising it off-world, but it's a pain-in-the-ass creature. It eats only a plant poor in nutrition, was riddled with STDs, and really creepy. People loved it, though." "Why?" he asked, all eyes focused in the box. "It was cuddly," she replied. The preserver shifted his gaze toward her. "Allow me further testing with it. Once it is confirmed, I'll pay your family handsomely for this." He stood up tall and reached out to her, petting her head slowly. "You have done good. There are more boxes to bring?" She looked up at him with a side glance. Yeah. There's a bunch more." He bobbed a bit. "Good. I will continue my cataloging. Payments will be sent out after each sample is coded. Do your families have market accounts yet?" She pointed at the crates. "All our names are on the crates." She turned and walked the lab door. The preserver cantered back to his table and started sorting again. One of his eyes pivoted up toward the camera in the corner. "Orbit? You keeping tabs on me?" A tall, purple, holographic man with a short beard appeared in the room across the table from the preserver. "I try to always. Never know when you're going to be buying rare earth fossils from refugees." He pointed over at the newly arrived crate with one hand. "That one there. Tasmania. It had something in it called a devil. If I remember my reading correctly, the devil is some sort of malevolent earth spirit. I don't want any trouble. You mind helping me figure out how to dispose of that?" Orbit flickered into a laugh and snapped back into his dignified composure. "It's an animal. Nothing demonic or spiritual about it. Just a name." "A mean animal, then?" Orbit shrugged. "They were known to bite. They ended dying out from biting each other, transmitting a viral kind of cancer to each other." The preserver bobbed a bit. "Curious. Has me intrigued already. No plagues. Orbit said before disappearing. The preserver continued cataloging, speaking to the room. I will comply. No plagues. The preserver finished going through the crates, sorting all the specimens into his vault after scanning them into his servers. He was on a scientific high and decided to go out into the station to celebrate. He strolled through out of the zoo and into the main concourse. He walked his circular pattern through the crowds, watching, sampling the air, bobbing rhythmically. He paused on a bench in the park to watch the humans enjoying the fresh plant-produced oxygen. The preserver focused one of his eyes onto his data slate and started disseminating funds. Interesting. I didn't plan on having to dip into my savings, he said to himself. He stood up and started walking again, heading over toward the Craddock habitats. It was a long hike, and he opted to take a zoomy pedicab. He watched his puller curiously. The creature had a quad-segmented head with 4 eyes. It shifted gaze similar to himself, able to focus on multiple things at once. The preserver leaned out the front of the cart. You're interesting. What is your name? The zoomy hissed out a reply, and his translator started processing it. Repair technician who enjoys helping with random tasks. The preserver leaned back into the cart seat. Say it again. I'll try and say it in your native tongue. Sulksha. The zoomy replied. Sulksha. I can remember that. You enjoy this cab work then? I do, he said as he turned into one of the zoomy tunnels. It helps the family accounts, keeps our habitats running. His air tubes vibrated after saying that. The preserver noted the breather on his back, feeding modified air into his lung ports. Running. I get it. Play on translations. The zoomy chuckled again. When we get to the nursery, do you mind waiting for me? I will pay for your time. Salk Shah swiveled his head so 2 eyes could see the preserver. Of course. I'll have to do laps around it, though. Pauses hurt. The preserver shifted his head a bit. Move-assisted internals, correct? Yeah. Can't stop but for a moment. Heart will stop. Not good. Understood. The zoomy pulled up near a door and unattached the cart in one motion. He bounced back and forth as the preserver stepped out. The preserver transferred some clam credits over to Hulk Shah. I'll be back momentarily. I appreciate you waiting for me. Gladly, sir. Retired Admiral Frith was sitting up at the upper bar, having a beer with Grack, Grunth, and Galler when the preserver entered into the breeding facility. He looked over at Tiger, who was siphoning out an egg cluster from an overripe Craddock. One of Tiger's 3 eyes caught sight of the patriarch cantering in. Tiger sat the siphon down and patted the Craddock. Excuse me. I have someone I have to attend to. Stay right here. Tiger stood up to his full height and cantered over to see his elder. What are you doing in my lab? Tiger asked. The preserver looked around at all the vats of gestating young. Looks like you are doing well on my project. The Craddock are using our potential nicely. He focused all 3 eyes on Tiger. You haven't been over-investing in this facility, have you? Whatever I invest in my own lab is my business. Tiger stretched his 3 legs taut, trying to match the preserver's height. This is my station. This is my lab. I'm here for my profits. Tiger shivered, his tiny spines on his torso rattling. You are grossly mistaken. This is my business. These are my customers. That is my human up there, he said, pointing at Frith. Frith lifted his beer at the preservers. The preserver straightened even taller, towering over the younger male. The only reason I didn't eat you and your cursed brood was at the behest of my human. All you are and all you do is thanks to me. This, all of it, is mine, and you owe me my rent. Human reproduction and fecal material I do. My name is on the deed. Everything here is purchased by me. All the funds are in my accounts. You have no rights here. Get your waste hole out of my lab, Tiger said, pointing at the exit with 2 hands. His 3rd hand was cupped into a striking pose. The preserver raised a hand to strike when Frith stood up. Oi! The man shouted. The preserver focused 1 eye on the human, 2 eyes still fixated on the male in front of him, You got an attack human, huh? Frith walked over to the railing, tapping his fragger on the piping. Yeah, he does. The three Craddock walked up and stood beside Frith. Grak bellowed, his jowls shaking. Frith smiled. He's got a lot of Craddock friends, too. The preserver lowered himself down to Tiger's natural height and brought his hand down to his side. Seems you did well with my advice. You've got a good human, it seems. Tiger bobbed slowly. Yeah, I do. Natural pack-makers, aren't they? That they are, Tiger said. Annoying sometimes, but it has its perks. The preserver stared at Tiger for a moment. This is my station. You know that. It is my claim by right. Things are different now. Your husk is flaking. You're old. You're going to have to make room soon. Maybe, the preserver said, but you're not my equal yet youngling. He turned and started cantering back toward the door. He stepped out and hailed his new friend, Sulk Shah. The Zoomy ran over and attached to the cart, pulling the preserver elder back toward his own lab. Sam had the Webbians prepare the conference room in the bank. They had coffee waiting for him when he sat down at the head of the table in the newly reworked room. It was expanded, and now had a windowed wall overlooking the main trading servers. The chandelier computer still hung high overhead, glittering with lights and whirring with cooling tubes. In the conference room, he could barely make out the hum. It was soothing to listen to as he sipped on the warm cup. A few minutes later, Curator arrived. She entered the room, her metal body now covered with a green, leathery skin. Sam smiled, shaking his head slowly. Wow, you mentioned it, but I didn't really visualize it. He stood up, walked over and hugged her. Wow, you look good. She smiled back at him, the hair tendrils on her head moving on their own accord. He stared. That's new too. She laughed. I heard you're a daddy now. That's new too. Sam chuckled and moved back to his chair, sitting down. He pointed to the chair on his right. Please sit. She did. The embodied AI sat staring at him. So, tell me, how's the little Clemens? Adorable. Still keeping us up, though. Olivia has been stellar with him. She's a natural mother. You think you'll have more? She asked. Sam shrugged. We're borderline endangered species, so I don't see why not, but that is her call. She's the one that has to do all the hard work. Oh? Got her playing house while you Big Daddy working man? Sam shook his head, laughing a bit. No. I mean, she has to, build them. Their little bodies in her, you know? He waved his hand a bit. No, I help out. I do diaper duty all I can, clean, all that. He pointed at her. Tell me about Vitalia. Let's hear about your green gem of a world. He laughed a bit more. Still freaks me out that you're female. She blanked her face, staring at him. I'm a computer program. Gender is a matter of fashion to us. Nothing to get your balls in a bunch over. Sam took a sip of his coffee. All right. Curator continued. Vitalia is good. I'm dealing with the morality of the gladiator rings, but they're generating a bunch of tourism. People from all over come to watch. Hell, our pay-per-view revenue rivals our mining industry. Overall, it seems to be a beneficial thing. And what about the natives? I've been seeing more of them arriving here at the station. I don't know much about them other than what you had in your reports. Well, Curator started. They're a bit rowdy, but eager to learn. Quick breeders, actually. Moved a colony of them to a world on the border with the Gallic territories. They've got an academy built there already. Not really good farmers, though. Hunters, right? I've seen a few signing up for the military here. Curator paused as two more people entered the room. Sam looked up and then stood. Novacor, Mr. Rockborn, thank you both for coming. The two entered and went over to shake Sam's hand. They all gave curt bows and took their seats. Sam sat back down at his seat. He looked around at them, then back to Curator. We can chat a bunch later. Let's go ahead and get started. She nodded. Orbit, if you don't mind bringing up the report. A hologram appeared over the table. Sam moved the 3D arrow through the display. I'm not going to deny it, but each of you is magnitudes more intelligent than I am. You all got the report and specifications. Humor me, though. The three looked at each other and nodded. Sam noted it and continued. The Snecht, old wobbly fuckers they are, live here at the edge of a black hole. Gravity is wonky, and over the eons of living near it, they have learned to love it. This here is one of their home stations. He moved the cursor over the ejecta emitting from the black hole. Note it's deriving its power from black hole spittle. Novacore stared at Sam. Sam took note. All right, main details. You guys probably just figured out all the math for it already. Time will be weird. Lives will go on while you're on this mission. Curator, you are a copy of yourself, so Vitalia will be covered. Rockborn, you're dedicated to exploring and space and stuff. So you're good, right? Rockborn bowed his head. Yes. This mission aligns with my personal goals. Sam turned back to look at Novacore. And Kaworu Prime has your primary copy running it as well, correct? Novacore shifted in his seat. Yes. I'm a mobile copy. I'm an independent self, though, mind you. Sam raised both his hands. I don't know all the AI jargon. I meant no offense. Each of you will have funds deposited in an account and will accrue interest over the duration of your mission. Primarily, I want you to deliver the requested scans of myself, make nice with them, and get all the Arlung data you can from them. That's it. Doable. The three looked back and forth at one another. Curator and Novacore shared a data feed for an instant. The three looked back at Sam, answering as one with a nod. Sam took another sip of coffee and then sat the cup down. Rockborn, I hope you'll be okay with it. But the habitus has been retrofit for your voyage. Degree on board, you know. Rockborn nodded. Sam looked at Curator. Curator, I hope you don't mind, but I gave the Veritas on board another assignment and allocated the original orbit to accompany you all. Will that be weird? Curator shook her head. No, that might actually be interesting. So you recovered the Callistode. That is interesting all on its own. Sam nodded. Yeah, Orbit has some degraded bits of code. I think it's related to the issue at hand. Be careful. Keep your firewalls up and see if you can learn anything from it. Deal? Novacore and Curator shared a brief transmission, and both then looked at Sam. Understood. All right. Well, that's the mission. You guys load up with whatever you need. Say what you need to say to anyone. Sam looked at Rockborn. Candace is okay with you going? Rockborn bowed his head slowly. He typed on his data slate hidden in his chest, transmitting his voice out loud. Her and I have already said our goodbyes. Vatborn aren't as close as you natural born. I think it's the loss of the younger years. We don't bond as fully as your kind. Sam shrugged. No worries. So long as you all are good. You have the coordinates and are free to depart whenever you're ready. Novacore stood up. Sam, I have to admit something to you. Sam leaned back, staring at the taller white and black and Finnegan-based android. Go on. When you were abducted, the Great Arm species took you to a white spherical facility, correct? Sam nodded, a curious look on his face. Yes. I had been doing contracts for them. I have a construction company now, and well, I didn't know what its purpose was going to be when I built it. Sam's eyes widened. Oh, wow, you built that habitat? Novacore nodded. Yes, I've built a few dozen for them. They pay well. Been trading for tech and resources. I'm sorry about that. Sam waved it off. I'm fine now. I'm doing the work to get my mind right. You didn't actively participate in it, did you? Novacore shook his head. Then don't worry, man. Aliens are fucking weird. You all know that. They're still confused as all hell why I threw such a fuss. Sanctions are in place now and laws written out for them, but in the end we got a good lead on whatever the big space bat is out here. Novacore shifted on his feet. Well, I have morality programmed into me and I feel awful about it. I'm sorry. Sam waved it off again. Tell you what, do the mission, figure something out for us, and I'll call it good. Nova bared his razor-bladed teeth in a twisted smile. Thank you, Sam. I do hope I am forgiven. It's been weighing on me for a time now. Sam got up and pat him on the back. He looked around the table as the other two stood up. Well, Heckletooth will have the old orbit installed by the end of the cycle. You all will be good to go then. Did you all want a ceremony or anything? Curator, walking toward the door, looked out the window at the giant computer containing her spur code. No, she said. Just make sure there are logs so the future knows to expect us back. Sam walked up and hugged her again. I'll make sure they know. Curator hugged him back. We'll do what we can to make friends for you. Sam smiled. Thank you. Gravity wells take a toll. I appreciate your sacrifice. Rockborn held up his massive scaled hand as he walked out the door. Novacore looked over his shoulder at Sam, ducking his head in tilt as he left out. Curator patted Sam on the shoulder twice. Go by Vitalia. Check on my other sometime, okay? She'll comp you a penthouse, I guarantee it. Full spa treatment, too. Sam winked at her. Of course. Curator turned and jogged a couple steps to catch up to the others. Sam stood in the door of the conference room, watching as the three left out the main bank doors. He raised a hand in a wave, but they didn't look back to notice.